Now we're ready. Okay. All right, so let me write. So you'll notice I don't have monographs for you today. I'm sorry. I thought I've got a monograph, and I have this big old thing of monographs that I've made, and thought surely I've made a monograph for Horsetail. I'll just come in Monday morning and I'll copy it right off. Don't have one for you. So you get a DIY monograph. This is the form that I use for my apprentices. They get to fill in all of the information instead of me giving it to you. But you can use that, or you can just sit with the journal form, or you can just kind of experience it and bliss out. You can do whatever you want. This is your experience. Have fun. But no monograph for you today. And related species, but not all of them. And the Equisetaceae family. So that's the common name. There's other common names. So sometimes you'll see it as shave grass is another common name that you'll see. I don't know why shave grass. I don't know why. That horsetail is.
I couldn't look up this plant as horsetail.
Mm-hmm.
I had to say horsetail reed. Then it would register.
Okay. Yeah, that is the frustrating thing is, and that's also why it's helpful to know the Latin name, because common names are going to go all over the place. But if you know the Latin name, then it doesn't matter by what name you are referring to it in the common name, the Latin name is always going to be the same, as long as you spell it correctly, which is difficult because Latin. But that is a... Okay. Good morning, online people. I'm not ignoring you. No, I am ignoring you, but only for a little bit. So this plant was decocted. This was simmered for about half an hour. Your usual inhalation, smell some, take some in through the nose, breathe it up into your sinuses and see, is there anything in there that you can smell that feels like it's therapeutic medicinally? There may or may not be. And then breathe it in through your mouth, inhaling it in, and feel if there's a change in your lungs. There may or may not be, but that's one of the first ways that you can engage with a plant, is that inhaling to see, are there aromatics? Is there anything being carried by that steam that is going to be therapeutic? And then we can take it into our mouth, hold it in the mouth for a little bit, see, is there a change in the mucous membranes of the mouth? Do I feel a change? Sometimes there's a dramatic shift in your mouth. You take a little sip of a tea and your whole body will have a strong response. And sometimes not. Good morning. And then taste it in, swallow it, pay attention to what flavors are there, how your mouth feels. Does your mouth feel dry or does it feel moistened? Is there any change in your musculoskeletal system? All of that stuff. Just kind of sit with it for a few minutes and see how you do. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Michelle. Is that yours?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Then this one's mine. But the reason I was saying that is because if I decocted it, decoction is simmering. So I simmered it in an open pot for half an hour. So if there were any aromatics in there to begin with, there probably wasn't after I boiled it, because most of those aromatics are there. But there's not really any aromatics in here. But this is a plant that you really do need to simmer it for a long time to really extract all those constituents. And we'll talk about that in a bit. No, Caroline, this is dried horsetail. We live, not you, Shush. We live in Southern California, and it's quite dry here and generally hot. It's less dry right now, but in other times more. And horsetail is a plant that really loves moisture. It likes damp, marshy areas. So
wetlands would be
wetlands and other cool, moist regions. Horsetail just spreads widely. It just takes off and it'll take over. Many people in cooler, moister regions find horsetail growing widely through their areas. Generally, we will only see it here where it's been deliberately planted in an area where it gets a lot of moisture.
If we snuck it in at the El Dorado Nature Center.
Don't sneak it in at the El Dorado Nature Center because it will be.
It's invasive.
It'll be invasive right around the
lake, yeah.
the lake, yeah. And also we can't use it since that lake is funky and the whole the land is funky. And horsetail is a plant that takes up minerals from the soil. It is. It draws up all of the minerals from the soil and holds it in its structure. So it would be drawing up all sorts of funky things from the water too.
And that gets into the tea, and those minerals, when you consume it, that's right. Okay.
Which is why it takes a half an hour of simmering to extract it, because unlike if we were making peppermint tea, where those essential oils, of course, if you think of a tea bag, right, you pour the water over and immediately it's available. Minerals are bound to the plant material a little bit more tightly, and so they really need to be extracted, giving heat and time. So simmering it over water, you're going to get much greater extraction of those minerals. This is not a tea that you can just use a tea bag and pour water over and let it seep for a couple of minutes and then extract it. Which is why we decocted it this morning to get all of that out of there. Yeah. So what flavors are you tasting in horsetail? Little sweetness? Okay. Sweet. What else?
It tastes buttery to me.
Buttery.
And we wait until she says.
Yeah.
I've noticed, like, wait, Julie's still standing, wait, and there's a buttock in the chair. What else?
It's your lifts for the day.
That's right, this is how I get my exercise. There's some pulling weeds. What other flavors do you taste?
Grassy.
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 Yeah.
Wet spinach water.
Wet spinach water. Which is sort of another way to say grassy, but different, yes.
A little bit minty. It gives off like that minty feel that peppermint gives you.
Right. A little bit minty. Oh, yeah.
That effervescence.
Yeah, a little
Like I can kind of
tingliness.
feel like the minty sensation like on my lips and
My big sister's watching. Hi, Kathy. Good morning. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. How rude of me.
Oh no,
What were you saying?
I was saying, and you could feel like the. How can I explain it? Like that tingle
Tingly.
from mint, like on the gums and the lips.
Yeah, that tingling. Yeah. And with this, completely different chemistry, except for one thing. What do you think that the chemistry of this plant is similar to the chemistry of Lamiaceae plants? Feeling in your mouth. What does the... Yeah, tannins. Yeah. So they both have, and especially because we decocted this, what do tannins like for extraction? What do you need to do to extract tannins? Heat and time, right? So heat and time, which is exactly what we need to extract the minerals. We're also getting some tannins out of here too. So I'm not going to put that in flavor because that's not necessarily flavor, that's a mouthfeel. But can you feel that kind of tightening, that astringency, right? So tannins. Yep.
I was looking back through my book because it reminded me of another family other than this. And it was what is it, Lamiaceae?
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Look at you getting all family focused. Nice job.
Are the roots how do the root, do they spread?
They
How
spread.
like bamboo?
They spread, yeah, a little. From what I hear, again, not having lived anywhere where it goes through my whole garden, but yes, it spreads like bamboo, and then it'll just pop up.
Okay,
You can go through forests where it's growing, and you'll just see these little trees, little baby trees. They're adorable, and I can say they're adorable because I don't live in somewhere where they would invade my garden like this. But little delicate little trees growing up through there.
Are they related to bamboo? Are they in the bamboo family?
They are not in the bamboo family. No. So bamboo is a Poaceae family. Poaceae is the grass family. Bamboo is more closely related to oats, to wheat, to grass. It's a grass. Yeah. So can you reap its benefits taking it as an herbal supplement? So I will get into that in just a little bit. Because right now, well, I'll get into that in a little bit because that's a really good question. That's a great question. All right, so here's a cool thing about the family, though. This is one of the most ancient of plants. This is a dinosaur of a plant. It's one of the oldest plants, and in the Cretaceous or Jurassic or whatever old period, there were giant horsetails was the primary plant species that would grow whole continents, had hundreds of feet tall, huge horsetails growing everywhere. It was the dominant life species, the plant species, and all of those giant horsetails. This is what now remains. They're the various different members of the Equisetaceae family, but they're not giant anymore. But when all of those plants died, they all died back, fell down, and made layers of what we now harvest as coal. The majority of coal that we mine for is the remnants, the residue of those forests of giant horsetail. So even people who've never used horsetail before have used horsetail if they are, using electricity indirectly. We are using horsetail.
That is interesting.
Isn't that fascinating? I know. Yeah.
Because that's the minerals that you mentioned earlier, correct? Is that?
Well, it's not the minerals. It is the carbon.
Okay.
It's the carbon that is concentrated down, right? So all of the minerals did certainly disperse into the soil, and so you in those areas it likely contributed dramatically to the health of the soil there as well. But yeah, it's just the pure carbon from the plant.
That is interesting.
Oh, Christina says, I saw horsetail in the woods. I love them. I want to plant them at Howie's, but he says they're invasive. Yeah, they're beautiful, especially the tiny ones in pores. So in pores? With spores, something like that. It rhymed. Yes, so there's, you'll see the little trees, the little cute trees. So Christina's up in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon right now, where it's moist. And the flowering plants, it's a non-flowering plant. It doesn't really technically flower, but it has these little buds that form. So you have the little trees, the little Christmas trees, and then you have these scale bud-topped forms that produce spores. And so you see these little I don't know what you would call them, what they would look like. They're just little turbans on the top of the
Pods?
Huh? Pods? Not necessarily a pod. It's a little bud. Anyway, and it releases spores, and so that's also the way that it propagates itself. So through spore distribution, and also through the roots moving through the soil.
It's the only plant who produces spores, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's a non-fungus spore producer. Yes. It's in so many ways. It's such an unusual little plant. Okay, so the flavors: sweet, buttery, grassy, wet spinach water, and a little bit of some mintiness, a little bit of sweetness, but mostly buttery, grassy spinach. It's just kind of neutral. Does it taste like food to you, or does it taste like medicine on that spectrum of food versus medicine?
Tastes more like food.
Tastes more like food. Yeah, so it kind of tells you as you're drinking it, this is something nourishing, this is nutritive. We're taking this in and this is giving us stuff that's good for us. It doesn't really tell us, only drink a little bit of me, note my really intense flavor, my intense bitterness, the strength of flavor. Quite often, not always, quite often will tell you if a plant is more of a food that you can drink abundantly or more of a medicine that we use with respect and with limited amounts.
So how much of this can you consume a day?
I will get into that when we go into dosing, because that's also a really important question, really important to get the dosing right on this. There's also a lot of misinformation and confusion around this that we'll go into. Okay, how does it feel thermally? So some plants are warming, right? They think of ginger or cinnamon or cayenne. They warm the body up. And some are cooling. Think watermelon or lemon or jamaica, right? So on that spectrum of warming versus cooling and taking out the fact that it is in hot water, which is warming, how does this plant feel, or can you feel a change in your thermal state? Does it feel warming or cooling or neutral, which is also
I feel like it's sort of warming. It's not, if you're looking at the spectrum, and here's cinnamon and ginger is over here, it's just a little bit north of neutral. It's a warming, but it's not, it's just sort of it's sort of like a light blanket.
a light blanket, not a woolen sweater.
It's sort of like just a...
Yeah, okay. So neutral, slightly warming is what? Yeah, for Mauricio and Michaela. Yeah. No, cooling, nothing. Yeah. And this is what we would expect. So it is a relatively neutral plant, right? And so when it's neutral, because each of us has a constitution, a body that falls on that scale too of heat, of hot versus cold, right? Some of us are really overheated and some of us tend to be cold. Some of us are always wearing a woolen sweater and some of us are always wearing shorts and a t-shirt, right? So, so when we have a plant that is relatively neutral, we're going to see more variation like this. This is what we would expect to see because it is always about the relationship between you and the plant, right? It's always about relationship. Everything about what we do is about relationship. And so you have a plant that's relatively neutral. You have a body that tends to be overheated or warm. That makes it sound like a pathology, and it's not a pathology. You have a body that tends to be warm. Then that plant for you is going to feel more cooling, and that person who tends to have a body that's more cold is going to feel more warmed by it. All in all, it tends to be rather neutral in its energetics. Yeah. Also, plants that are nourishing like this, that we take in, that really give us that nutritive effect. We've talked about this before, that sometimes they can feel warming because bringing in concentrated nutrients in your body can fuel metabolic fires. Your body, in bringing in that nutrition, can go, oh, I am nourished. I feel fire kind of gently rising within me because now you're giving me the nutrition that I need, especially in a body that generally is not very well nourished. A person who's drinking Diet Coke and ding-dongs for breakfast, who drinks a nourishing plant, even if that plant is cooling, may feel a warmth, an increase in warmth, because their body's going, finally, thank you, you're giving me something that I can use for fuel, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's also one of the reasons why sometimes we can feel warming effects from a plant where everyone else is going, I feel cold, and you're like, I feel warm. Yep. The opposite can also be true. So, always about relationship. Alrighty. So how about on the spectrum of fluids moving in the body? Some plants feel like they bring more moisture into the body. They're moistening. Some plants are diuretic. They're moving fluids out of the body. We're going to get up and pee in just a little bit. How does this one feel? Or does it feel like that? Feels drying? Okay. Yeah, this is a drying plant. So you will need to pee a little bit. It is a diuretic. That is one of the actions of this plant. It is a diuretic, not a real strong one, but it definitely is. And so you have two things. You have that diuresis, the movement of fluid through the body. It's enhancing that. And you also have that astringency from the tannins, drying up the mouth, right? The tightening of the tissues, that duality there. Nice. Alrighty, which also gives you a hint as to the effects on the structure of the body, right? So if we feel that astringency of the gastric mucosa, we feel that kind of tightening and firming, we see that it has a more tonifying effect to the structure of the body. That's also a major usage of horsetail, is enhancing tissue integrity and strength in the body. So those are the energetics of the plant. So the constituents in the plant, we do have, not just tannins, but we have flavonoids.
They have to have them. Well, no, because you feel the food feeling.
Yeah. So we have some tannins, we have phenolic compounds, we have these flavonoids. Flavonoids are, what do you know about flavonoids? Antioxidant. Anti-inflammatory, nice. Third one?
And then they tonify.
Tissue tonics. So many different effects from flavonoids, so many different effects from flavonoids, so many different flavonoids. It's a big family of chemicals in plants. But generally, when you see flavonoids, you know that the plant is going to, in varying amounts, it's going to protect against oxidative damage, strengthen, reduce inflammatory response, and generally the reduction in inflammation happens on a couple of different levels. So you can reduce inflammation by inhibiting pro-inflammatory compounds in the body. Right? And so many plants that are anti-inflammatory do that. They just shut down those drivers of the inflammatory response. And you can also have an anti-inflammatory effect by strengthening tissues. And strong, healthy, resilient tissues are not going to be as reactive to inflammatory processes in the body. They're going to limit inflammation. Generally, when you have a flavonoid-rich plant, and many plants are flavonoid-rich, you're going to have both of those. So both a reduction of inflammatory triggers in the body and also a strengthening of tissues, right? Which is the best combination. And then tissue tonics, strengthening those tissues, which is, again, a major reason why we use horsetail. Alrighty, so flavonoids, there we go. And then also minerals. And flavonoids and minerals are the two primary tissue tonifying classes of compounds, right? Some tissues are strengthened by minerals and some tissues are strengthened by flavonoids. When you have a plant that has both of them, you have really strong tissue support. One of the primary minerals in horsetail is silica. And horsetail carries it as silicic acid is the form of silica. So here's one of the confusing things, cool things. It can be confusing, it can be cool. It depends on your frame of mind. I'm going to convince you that it's a cool thing. There's silica in horsetail. It's very poorly extracted and absorbed. Very poorly extracted and absorbed. But silica is, horsetail is from 1 to like 7% total silica content. It is really, really rich in silica. So even if you have a very small percentage of extraction, a really low rate of extraction, you are getting some silica soluble in the water. Not a lot, but enough. Now, silica is a structural component of bone tissue and of keratinous tissue. The keratinous tissue in our body are nails and hair and the external epidermis, the outer layer of the epidermis. So all of those tissues are made of the same type of tissue, and that type of tissue is reliant on silica for structure and strength and integrity. And this is one of the primary reasons that people use horsetail, is for strengthening of hair and nails and the epidermis.
Can you use it topical, or is it just
You
ingest it?
can. You can use it topically. In fact, it's a really effective vulnerary. There's a new word for some of you. We'll get rid of the flavors. So, horsetail is a vulnerary. A vulnerary is a wound healing agent. It helps us to heal wounds. So, application of horsetail, we could take the tea and make a compress or a bath. We can take the fresh plant and crush it up and make a poultice. We can take the mark from the tea, thank you, and just apply that, the dried plant material that we've soaked in water, and apply that. All of those are really fine ways of applying it externally. I don't think that it would be very effective for strengthening nails by just soaking them in it, right? But for skin health, for strengthening skin, for skin that is very, very delicate, that tears very easily. In elders, we see this quite often, right? You have, or people who have been on steroid medications. Steroids thin the tissues. They cause them to lose that strength. So horsetail in a bath or a compress is going to be really good in those areas where tissue integrity has been lost. In an oral, in a tea or an oral wash, swooshing around the mouth in when we have gums that are bleeding or spongy or just generally delicate. Oh, thanks. I'll just pour myself. You don't have to pour for me. No, pour for everyone else, but not me. I'm fine with that. I'm not taking it personally, bitch.
Look at her get red. Oh my God.
Thank you so. I had still had a. Thank you very much for pouring, Alicia. I really appreciate that. I can do that too, Alicia. So vulnerary, absolutely, yes.
So drinking the tea will have the same effect as a oral
So I think,
or
yeah, I think drinking it is actually more effective.
it's more.
Of course,
effective, right?
both are great, right? But more effective taking it that way because there's a limit to how much silica we can absorb transdermally. Right? There's a limit to how much it can extract. And then from that extraction into the skin, I'm not convinced. I think that the effects on the skin are likely more due to the presence of the flavonoids than they are to the minerals. We can extract minerals taken internally. Right? I think that's a better way of using it that way. But yeah, both is going to be really effective.
And for the hair, topically?
For the hair topically, horsetail is classically used as a hair wash for strengthening the hair and also for healing the scalp, for scalp disorders. Remember, the scalp is skin, and this is a vulnerary for healing the scalp. So anytime there's scalp irritation, inflammation, also horsetail is a very fine antifungal. It's a very fine antifungal agent. And so one of my favorite ways to make it as a scalp treatment is to infuse horsetail in vinegar. So horsetail in a jar, pour apple cider vinegar over it, let it sit for 2 to 4 weeks, strain that out. You can also throw in, you tell me, what would be other good, Rosemary, yes. And another classic combination there.
Milky Way? No.
Oh, good guess, yes. Nettle. Right? So a really nice combination for a hair external treatment, which you could also totally take shots of because it's just vinegar with herbs in it, right? That combination of nettle and horsetail and rosemary. Extracted in vinegar. Vinegar, acidity preferentially extracts minerals. Minerals love being pulled into an acidic medium. And so when we extract in vinegar, which is malic acid and acetic acid are very, very acidic. It's just going to really pull all of those out and concentrate them and stabilize them. If you make a vinegar extract, you're not having to make it fresh every day as you do a cup of tea. You can just have your jar full of your mineral extract and take it either in a little bit of water, drink that in the morning, right? Lots of people do that with vinegar anyway, right? A little bit of vinegar and honey and water first thing, and activates the digestion and gets you peeing and all of this good stuff. If you have infused these herbs into it, you are also getting those minerals. You're also getting some nourishment along with the effects of the vinegar. So that's a nice way of doing it. A little bit in water and drink it that way. A little bit in water and application to the scalp after you shower is a very, very good time to do that. When you shower, you have warmth and moisture on the scalp, on the scalp, which opens up the tissues and makes them more receptive to whatever you're going to apply to the skin. So shower, wash your hair, however you do, and then the very last thing you would do is take a little bit of that vinegar that you've infused with the horsetail and maybe other things if you like, in a 1-to-5 ratio. So 1 part of your vinegar with 5 parts of water to dilute that. You don't want to put undiluted vinegar on your skin. That doesn't feel good. Plus it'll go down into your eyeballs and really burn. So 1 to 5 dilution. Do everything that you do in the shower, and the very last thing you do is turn off the water and just dump it over your head, massage it in, have it go everywhere else in your body too, right? It's really, really good. Reestablishing that acid mantle, the exterior of the skin likes to be slightly acidic. And so that'll be on your scalp, on your face, all over your body. You're just giving that nice little layer of minerals and acidity and everything good. And then don't rinse it off. Let that just sit. You're going to smell like vinegar while it's wet, but when it dries, that distinctive flavor or scent dissipates, and you really don't smell it that much at all. But that's a very, very good treatment for your hair, for stimulating circulation, for healing scalp irritation, inflammation, and quite often people can get secondary fungal infections in the scalp that present as seborrheic dermatitis, right? As dandruff, or just scalp irritation. And so both vinegar and horsetail being so effective for regulation of the skin and for helping to bring fungal infections under control. That's going to be really effective. Also very good for fungal infections in the nail beds, in toes or feet, soaking or spraying. You can put a treatment like that into a spray bottle and then just spray your feet when you get out of the shower. Spray them with a little bit of your horsetail vinegar mixture and let them dry like that. Really, really effective way of fighting fungal infections, especially in people. We see a lot of foot funguses in people who wear closed-toed shoes all the time, right? A lot of people who have to wear closed-toed shoes in their work, they're always in closed-toed shoes. They never have open toes because they can't, given whatever work they do, or if they just choose to wear closed-toed shoes. You get to wear whatever shoes you like, but that can just set up an environment for proliferation of those funguses. So that's a really good way to treat. I said 1 part vinegar and 5 parts plant material. So what I said, that's a dilution. That is a standard. The 1-to-5 ratio is a ratio that you'll quite often see in herbalism. We like 1-to-5. They're good numbers. If you grind the horsetail to a powder, you will be able to cover with 1 part of the, and that's opposite. 1 part the plant material, 5 parts of the menstruum, if you're going to do a 1-to-5 ratio. Because no, Anna, you are absolutely right. That would be just enough to slightly dampen the plant material, which wouldn't work at all. So, but you can also just do the folk method of put it into a jar. Where's that? Put your plant material into a jar and then just cover it by about a half an inch to an inch with your what did I just talk about? Vinegar. With the vinegar. Just set it like that. So about that much. So you can either do 1 to 5 plant to menstruum, or you can just pour it over. It doesn't really need to be that specific a measurement when you're using it for that. We want to be more specific when we're making tinctures and things like that. But this is a vinegar. It's a food, right? And we don't have to be so specific in our measurements of our foods. We can just have the
So
foods.
it's like, would you use 1 cup, 1 tablespoon?
Generally, you would be using about a teaspoon of the infused vinegar a day.
No,
to a
I'm
tablespoon.
talking about as far as like with the horsetail.
Oh.
Before you cover it with the vinegar. How much of the horsetail would you put in?
You're going to put in however much you want to put in. You're going to put however much you have into a jar, and then you're going to cover it by about a half an inch of the vinegar. So if you have 2 cups, it'll be a bigger jar, or a little bit, it'll just be a little bit jar. So just put however much you have. Grind it up to expose more of the surface area. If you have a coffee grinder or somewhere where you can grind it up, otherwise don't worry about it too much. Yeah, and then just cover it up. And then, yes, Tiffany, thank you. And then the other 1 to 5 is then you dilute the vinegar to water, because undiluted vinegar is just a bit rough on your skin. The one time that I do like the undiluted vinegar is if you are spraying it onto the feet, because you want that concentration on the feet. But if you have an open fungal infection that you're wanting to treat, you want to dilute it because it's going to burn and be really painful if you are putting undiluted vinegar into an open wound like a fungal infection. It's also very good, by the way, for fungal infections in dogs, right? Dogs quite often will get fungal infections in their ears, and they just hang around there forever. Dilute it, and it's gross, especially if they're floppy-eared dogs. Floppy-eared dogs, you give them a bath, or they like, if they're water-loving floppy-eared dogs, and they just kind of hold the moisture in there. I used to have a very floppy-eared dog, very, and he would always get those, and he was old and kind of decrepit anyway. Bless his heart, he was adorable. So I would take his long floppy ears and put them above his head and put a clip on them, a hair clip on them, to hold his ears up, so that he would get some air circulation in his ears, because you can't go in to those ears and dry them all off. There's too much, all of that. So yeah, we just do that after it works very well.
Real quick, back to the scents, the smell.
Mm-hmm.
Insects when they emit that spray, like ants or those beetles. Why do I smell that a very faint, when it's warm only?
Right.
When it's warm only, I get that vague, and it reminds me of that smell. I don't know if that's weird or what. Do you know?
Yes.
Do you know what smell I'm talking about? The ant spray when they make their defense mechanism.
Yeah, I don't.
I never smelled that. That's cool.
It is very cool, yes. Now I totally want to piss off an ant.
Yeah, that's true. I do.
Hey.
Well, and beetles do that when they raise their butt in the air.
Right, yeah.
They emit that smell. So
yeah.
that was curious. So yeah, I just found that really
yeah.
interesting.
I don't know. That is very interesting. So flavonoids and minerals, primarily. So we have 2 different stories that are told about horsetail. One is silica doesn't extract in there, and if it does, it's inorganic silica, so it's totally unavailable to your body. There's no reason. Don't even talk about silica as yes, it's in the plant, but it can't come into solution here. Well, it strengthens keratinous tissues, which is what silica does. And so you can say that silica doesn't enter into the tea, but neither the cup of tea or the herb knows that, and they are strengthening those tissues anyway. So I don't believe that's true. I believe that there's just not a whole lot that comes out there. We don't want a whole lot. A whole lot would put a lot of stress on our body, and silica is abundant. But there is an effect, and there's an effect of silica extraction in the tea if you make it the correct way, if you make it in a decoction, or if you make it in a vinegar. Now, a vinegar extraction is going to increase that bioavailability because of that acidity, because those minerals like that acidity there. But here's a really interesting thing. A tincture of horsetail will also do that. Why would that be unusual? Why would a tincture of horsetail be unusual in strengthening the nails like that and getting the silica in?
Because doesn't the alcohol kill the mineral?
Yeah, minerals don't like alcohol. Minerals do not care about alcohol. They're not extracted into alcohol. If you make a tincture, if you make an alcohol extraction, you did very good. You get 2 points. If you want to extract minerals from a plant, you need to minimize alcohol because they don't like alcohol. They're not going to come out in alcohol. But a tincture of horsetail given to people with weak. So again, the horsetail didn't read the piece of paper where it says you are not able to extract there, and it does it anyway. I'm sorry, Alicia, what were you saying?
What about an oil extraction?
So oil extraction, I would say, would be less effective for the same reason. Now, there is complex chemistry. There are also some sterols in there. There are some saponins. Those will extract into the oil.
I was just thinking if you didn't follow the rules for tinctures.
And it might not follow the rules for oil, but I've played with horsetail in an oil before, and I always felt that it didn't work that well. On the other hand, if I lived in Oregon with Christina, and there was just horsetail growing everywhere, I had an abundance of it, sure, I would totally play with that, especially with the fresh. That would be really interesting to see what I could do with that. So, Christina, you should do that. But because it's not abundant around me, I'm not going to play with it that much. If anyone online, Christina said it because of the minerals, plays with an oil extraction of horsetail, I'd love to hear about it. Yes, Mauricio.
Do you mix it with the acetate extraction with jojoba oil? Is good for your
Are you talking about like an intermediary? The way you think about that. So I believe what Mauricio is saying is that treatment with a vinegar to liberate those minerals, and then extraction with oil, because now you've released those minerals, and then the theory is that the oil would then extract them. Cool theory, but still the minerals don't like oil. Even if you pull them out, even if you were to completely extract them and just bathe them in oil, they would not extract completely. But again, there's more than just minerals. There's more than just flavonoids in the plants. Plant chemistry is very, very complex, and there may be other things that come out in that. So you ever find yourself with a whole bunch of horsetail? I would definitely do that. So other benefits of horsetail beyond the mineral content, beyond the flavonoid content. So wound healing externally, pretty much any time there's a lack of tissue integrity, really anywhere in the body. Sorry, not leaving that quite yet because I didn't finish. Also, internal use, it is very, very effective for strengthening ligaments and tendons. And for people who have osteopenia, the precursor to osteoporosis, or osteoporosis as part of a whole protocol for osteoporosis, because silica is so beneficial for strengthening that. But very effective also, ligament and tendon damage, muscle damage, any type of structural loss of integrity or tone. Horsetail is going to be a specific for that, taken internally or, if appropriate, applied externally. Can you repeat what I said about the solubility in alcohol? Not very. Not very soluble in alcohol because minerals don't like alcohol, so you're not going to get extraction of the minerals. You're not going to get extraction of silica in alcohol, but alcohol extracts do strengthen hair and nails and skin, and so something other than the silica is going to be helpful at strengthening that, or the silica's being pulled in irrespective of the fact that there's a whole bunch of alcohol there, and silica doesn't care what you say about it not liking alcohol. Don't know. It works. It's magic. That's the thing that's happening. It's magic.
So when you do the alcohol extraction, what would you mix it with for someone to put it on their hair or nails?
So I wouldn't do the alcohol extraction on the hair or the nails just because it would dry it out.
Right.
But you could take that internally. Yeah, you would just do like a squirt or two into water or tea, and then take that. The benefit of making a tincture is concentration and stability. You can just carry a little bottle of tincture in your pocket and just squirt it into your mouth. The downside is I still don't think it's as effective as water or vinegar as a whole plant medicine. But people make tinctures and they use them. So there's that. So the other benefit of horsetail, so vulnerary and then tissue tonic, it is also, we talked about its diuretic effects. The diuretic effects are actually also, it is not only a diuretic, it's also a urinary tonic, a urinary astringent. And as a urinary astringent, that feel in the mouth, right? That feel of astringency, that tightening and firming effect that you feel in your mouth is also going to be seen throughout the gastrointestinal tract and also into the kidneys and the bladder and the whole urinary tract. So as a urinary astringent, it's very effective for bedwetters and for general incontinence. You have a kid who's still wetting the bed, we can give them, now there's a lot of different reasons why bedwetting happens. It's sometimes the body just hasn't developed to the point where it can hold moisture. Sometimes they're drinking a whole bunch. There can be some spasticity issues. There can be psychological issues. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why someone would be having nighttime incontinence. If the nighttime incontinence is linked to a lack of tone in the urinary tract, that it's just not able to be strong and resilient and hold that fluid within it, this is going to be really helpful. For the other issues, this would be a good adjunct therapy, but you'd want to address all of those other issues as well. But as a urinary antiseptic, it's also very good for benign prostatic hyperplasia, BPH, or prostate enlargement. Prostate enlargement. As the prostate enlarges, the urethra, which goes through it, can get blocked, and we have a bladder that doesn't empty completely or easily. And so that means for people with prostates, you can have dribbling, you can have a lot of time that it takes to void the bladder. And you can also have an increase in bladder infections because the bladder doesn't empty completely. When prostate enlargement gets severe, we can also see a backing up of the urinary fluid, and that can be toxic. So we want to certainly address prostate enlargement when it happens, and this can be one plant that can be really effective for that, just to astringe those tissues, tighten them up, and help with clearing of the urine out of the bladder. It's also traditionally used for kidney stones, for renal gravels, small kidney stones, to protect against. Christina says, I thought the minerals wouldn't be good in anything other than water and vinegar. Well, that's the thing, Christina, is that, yeah, minerals like water and they like acid, but when people make a horsetail tincture, it works to strengthen the nails and hair. So something else, because there are not absolutes, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff that happens. So a glycerin extraction, glycerin is another way of extracting things and stabilizing them. Glycerin would be a good happy medium, and actually an acetylglycerin extract, putting a little bit of some acid as lemon juice or citric acid or vinegar in with the glycerin would enhance that extraction. But glycerin would be another okay thing. It's, again, wouldn't be nearly as good as water or vinegar, but if you want to carry it around with you. An Oxymel would be awesome. Do I have any Oxymel samples?
What is an Oxymel?
I'm gonna give you some. If I have some. So an oxymel is a
Oxymel.
Oxymel. Would it be safe for tomcats with bladder crystals? Yes, I would think that it would be. We quite often use horsetail with animals, and so making a tea or a glycerite would be very good for a kitty with.
Julie, do you want us to get the little paper cups?
I don't have any paper cups.
Oh.
So that's okay. We can send this around, and you can. Yeah, those are so big. You can just put a little shot of it in your cup, or here's some extra cups. If not everyone has an empty cup, so if you have an empty cup, you can just put a couple of shots. This is an oxymel of horsetail and burdock and nettle. Ooh. And horsetail, burdock, nettle, and oat straw. So all of those herbs are very rich in minerals. This is you can just pour. You can just go sploosh.
No,
just sploosh them.
He was giving me 2 drops. I went like, and then they were on the floor.
Yes,
I was like,
Mauricio, just sploosh it in there. Just give them a little shot.
Like this?
Yeah. Oh, that's a lot. So somewhere in between those two, it's going to be good.
That's delicious. I'll take some more if you don't want it. Well,
It is very delicious. So what it is, vinegar and honey combined together. So also, if you don't like honey, or if you don't like vinegar, or you don't do honey, you can just put your the universal no thank you thing. But it's so good. It's so yummy because you get that sweet and sour kind of thing going on, and you've now made a concentrated source for extracting all of those minerals into this. So taking a little shot like that, isn't it yummy? I know. Now are you wanting back what you just gave to Michaela? Oh, okay.
She didn't take it.
Could you write what it was?
No, I have a question because sometimes they sell the apple cider
Thank you,
vinegar
Mauricio.
with the honey in it. Could you use that?
You
Or is
could.
I'm just saying because I grabbed the wrong bottle. I thought it was
Right.
just that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I do because it's got
Yeah.
the honey in it and it has a nicer flavor.
Yeah, you can totally use that. Absolutely. Yeah. Since that's what you have, go ahead and use it. I'm a big believer in use what
Could
you
you say
have.
what it was again? Nettle? Horsetail?
Nettle, horsetail, burdock, and oat straw. Nettle, horsetail, burdock, and oat straw is this one. You could also do it just all with horsetail. You just take horsetail, grind it up, put it into a jar, cover it with. This combination is my standard. Is I use 3 parts of vinegar to 1 part honey. I don't like it too sweet, so I have like 3 ounces of vinegar to 1 ounce of honey, and you just pour it over the herb. Let it sit for a couple of weeks to extract those minerals out. And then you have a concentrate, and it's shelf stable at that point. You don't have to keep it refrigerated. You want to use it up within about a year. But within a year, you can just take shots of this, and it's very, very yummy. It's really, really yummy.
Cutie every day?
Every day.
Or-
However you want to take it. Some people, if they're using it for diuresis, for enuresis, they might want to take it multiple times during the day,
Okay,
right?
there was only 3.
The other benefit of a concentrate like this, either as a tincture or as an oxymel, is if you are giving it to someone for nighttime incontinence, you don't want to give them a big cup of tea before they go to bed. Right? That would be, yes. Yeah.
That would help a woman who gets up in the middle of the night
To pee? Yes. Absolutely.
Also
Yes. Because it's strengthening.
So this would be something if somebody, because of the fact of childbirth and their system isn't holding anymore, or because we get older and it's not
Or
holding
because we get
anymore.
older. Yeah. Exactly.
Do you know how much teas I have to drink?
Thank you, Roseanne. Boy. It's nice for someone to help out.
That's so good.
I
Yeah,
know.
isn't it yummy? I love. There are some strange people who don't like oxymels, but I love it. Anyway, oxymels are great ways of using the medicine as well. So,
Touch my sister-in-law.
wound care, antifungal, genitourinary astringent, diuretic, tissue tonic, mineral rich. Here's the thing. You don't ingest horsetail. So this goes back, someone asked at the very, very beginning, can you use it as an herbal supplement? You don't ingest the whole plant. We use extracts of horsetail. We don't ingest the whole plant. So you wouldn't want to grind this up. You wouldn't want to make a capsule with the ground herb inside the capsule. And you wouldn't want to buy the ground herb in a capsule, right? You wouldn't want to make a... electuary, thank you. That was exactly the word that I was thinking of. You wouldn't want to make an electuary, which is the powdered herb in a honey medium. It's a really nice way of taking a lot of herbs, powder them and put them into honey, and then you just have a little bit of that honey, and the honey carries the herbs into the body. That's great for many other plants, but we don't use the whole plant horsetail internally because that high amount of silica is really going to be damaging to the gastric mucosa. You can use this. One of the other ways that we use the fresh horsetail, if you're out camping and there's horsetail growing, is you can cut those reeds, put on some gloves, and use them to scrub your pots and pans. They're really scrubby. It's used to, you can use horsetail to what is it called when you are wood? You have sand. Thank you. Hi, James. You can use it to sand wood because of the yeah, my language just ran out of language because of the abrasive. That was exactly the word. Boy, thank you all for that. Because of the abrasive nature of the plant, you can use it for sanding wood, and you can use it for cleaning pots. So that sanding, that intense abrasiveness, we don't want that on our teeth, chewing it up, and we don't want it on the gastric mucosa, sanding and abrading our gut. So an extract of it, awesome. An extract is great. The whole plant, no. So that would be... And I don't think so. Mia, I do see a lot of people. Mia says, "Hi, Mia." By the way, Mia asked, "Would it be okay to grind up for a tooth scrub?" So you do actually see a lot of people using it in tooth powders, but I think that it's too strong. I think it's too abrasive, and you can lose some of the tooth enamel. So I wouldn't. However, you could make an oral care wash with it. Right? You could make a vinegar-based or a low alcohol-based wash, and so use other gentler abrasives for brushing the teeth, and then have a horsetail treatment afterwards. That would be really nice, again, for strengthening the tissues, for strengthening the gums. That would be very, very helpful. So that's how I would do that. Alrighty. Energetics, taste, constituents, actions, indications, uses, safety issues. We talked about that. Pharmacy, the medicine making. We make a tea. If you want to extract it, a decoction. If you wanted to enhance, you want to make a water extraction, but you want to make that stronger. How could you enhance your water extract?
Stronger in what way?
You want to make it the tea stronger.
A double extraction.
You can do a double extraction. Yep, you can definitely do that. Get a new batch and put the existing tea over that and boil it again. You could do that. What's another way?
Besides a decoction?
Besides a decoction. Yeah. Vinegar acidify the water. So you can do a vinegar extract, but you can also just acidify your water. Do a little squeeze of lemon in there before you start decocting it, not afterwards. But as you put all of your herbs together, put the herbs and the water, and then a little squeeze of lemon or lime or a little splash of vinegar, a little bit of your Oxymel, a splash of citric acid, whatever acid you have around, just slight acidification of that water is going to make it much more effective as a solvent for extraction of those minerals. Yes.
Would that be, could you do that also with something like milky oats?
You can. Now with the milky oats, we're generally not using milky oats, the fresh milky oats, so much for their mineral content. We're primarily using them for the alkaloids, which is why we do the alcohol extraction, right? However, you can make an oxymel of fresh milky oats because those
Or not
alkaloids
milky oats,
like
I meant,
oat straw.
Yeah.
Oat straw, absolutely, you could. Yeah. Oat straw. Actually, Chris from way back first year, turned me on to. He made oat straw limeade. He squeezes lime juice into the water and makes a decoction of oat straw, and then does a little bit of sweetener. He uses xylitol because stevia. He uses stevia because he's gross. But a little bit of some type of a sweetener in there. It's delicious. It's oat straw limeade yumminess. It's wonderful. So yeah, anything that's mineral rich, you can do that. Just slightly acidifying that.
And what about if you did an overnight infusion?
An overnight infusion would also be okay because you have the duration, right?
Yeah.
So starting with some boiling water, I would also acidify that because you're not decocting, because you don't have that long heat. So an overnight infusion, what Roseanne is talking about is having a jar, putting it in your jar, pour boiling water over it, and then just leave your jar there on the counter to extract overnight. Is a very good way of making a lot of herbs. That works really, really well. But when you've got so many minerals really bound to the plants, it is more effective to maximize that extraction, to decoct it, to keep the temperature up and stable for about half an hour. Then you could do overnight. Or you could do an overnight infusion and acidify the water. Or you could do an overnight infusion and just extract the other stuff and some of the minerals, but you just wouldn't get maximum extraction of the minerals. Lots of different options. They're all fine, but if you wanted to make the strongest, you would do acidification and decoction and overnight. That would make it super, super strong. Super strong. Alrighty. Okay, let's see. Any other questions about horsetail?
How do you dry it? Because I'm going up to Oregon to go visit, and it's rampant in the riverbeds.
It is rampant in the riverbeds. It is so much.
So how would you dry? Do you just cut it and then hang it just like any other plant?
I like to. You can. My favorite drying method is in the back seat of the car. Put a sheet on the back seat and lay your plants over there. Flip the sheet over so they're not in the sun, but they get air circulation. And then close the windows of your car.
Right.
And park it somewhere in the sun. And within a day, you get perfectly crispy. It is the best. It is the best. It's better than my dehydrator. It's better than anything.
Right.
It's fast. It's clean. Your car ends up smelling with like plants.
Right.
My son gets kind of pissed off by it because it's always like where he sits is always kind of. What you can also do is get a tray of some sort, a bigger one than this,
Right.
and lay cloth over it, and then lay a single layer of the plants over that, and then put a light cloth over that. And if you have trays that have lips like this, you can actually cross them. You can do one like this, and then you can do one like this, and one like that. So you don't have the footprint of all of these little
Right.
trays all the way around. One of my students is an emergency room nurse, and she gives me those purple trays that you see everywhere are emergency room trays that they only use once and they don't use again, and it just infuriates her. So she brought me a big old pile of these plastic trays. They're great for things like that. Same thing, you can pile them up. What you can also use if you want to make a really good drying rack is the black nursery trays, the black perforated nursery trays. If you take those, clean those out, and you can lay a fabric or paper towels in the base of that, and they've got a 3-inch lip.
Right.
So you can actually put a pretty good amount of plants, and same thing, stack them, or you can hang them and put like a foot of rope in between, hang them from all 4 corners, and just you can do a whole dangling row. Bring all of the ropes together at the top, and then you have a tray, and then a tray, and then a tray. That's not and then a tray, and just dangle them down, and then you just hang it somewhere, and you've got 8 trays, 8 drying trays that way. So, lots of different ways, but car drying works wonderfully. And yes, Missy says that drying method probably wouldn't work in Oregon. That is such a good point. Well, Missy, have you ever tried? Hi, Missy, by the way. Can you do in your car? Does in your car dry up? I've never lived in the Pacific Northwest, so I don't know. But yeah, super important point is that if you're in a consistently damp and cold environment, that's going to be less effective than being in Southern California. But I mean, you do sometimes get sun up there, not unless it's super dry out. Okay. All right. So perhaps when you go up to the Pacific Northwest.
It's Southern Oregon. So
Southern
it's
Oregon.
Not, yeah, it's not as rainy as wet as Northern.
All right. So, but yeah, super important. Thank you, Missy, for. She says that can happen in July, August, September. So that's the time to do car dehydration in Pacific Northwest. Here all the time. Yes.
So question, when making it as a tea, how long do you boil it?
For about 20 to 30 minutes. And then if you can let it sit for a little bit longer, that's great. Time. Remember that time is your friend up to a certain point. A couple of days is going to be funky. You're welcome. Oh, I'm sorry for splashing that on you.
The longest, an hour as the longest?
Yeah, I don't think that you're going to get much more after an hour. You can, sometimes if you're using a nutrient-rich plant, a mineral-rich plant, you can do an hour or 2-hour decoction and then concentrate them down. So you can get, you just can continue to concentrate it down and get a super thick sludge. In fact, you can make a tea powder concentrate by making tea and then just reducing all of that water off and then collecting the concentrated tea base as a powder.
And it still has the minerals. It still has remnants of all the other stuff that was boiled out of it.
And minerals are elements. They have been here since the Big Bang, and they will be here long after they change forms. They're for a little bit they're in Horsetail, and then they're going to be in our body, and then they're going to be somewhere else. But a little bit of heat is not going to break them down. However, I would be concerned with that with Horsetail, just because, So I wouldn't do that with Horsetail, but I do that with most other mineral-rich plants. That's a great thing to do.
Make matcha?
I don't know how they make matcha. I don't. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
And then the best way to extract it is with the vinegar, right?
That's going to be the strongest. That's right.
Strongest.
Yes. And the tastiest. This is an Oxymel. Christina says, Christina, who moved from Joshua Tree, well, not moved, but she lives in Joshua Tree sometime, and she lives in Oregon where she's going to herb school sometime. So she has 2 completely different ecosystems. So yeah, not like SoCal here. That is that's saying something. I miss drying in my car. And we miss you, by the way. Alrighty. Any other questions? We're over. Yes.
How long can you keep it in herb form?
That's a great question. Same thing. Minerals don't break down. So the minerals, if you're taking it for the minerals, they will last forever. If we bury this and someone unearths it in our tomb in 2,000 years, the minerals are still going to be there. They cannot break down. The other things may break down, but the minerals will not. So a year to 2 years is totally safe for the horsetail to be active. Beyond a year, you're going to have some degradation of some things, but not the minerals. Minerals are forever. All right, so, would horsetail be good for reducing or preventing scarring? Ichirsa, thank you for, and hello you. Thank you for asking that again, because I did see that you posted that earlier, and I meant to answer that and then I forgot to. So Itirsa says, would horsetail be good for reducing or preventing scarring, keloid scars? I would take it internally for that, and maybe applying it externally. I don't know how effective it would be at breaking that down. But you could try if you wanted to experiment with it for scarring. I would try if you wanted to try an oil extraction. I'm not convinced you could, but you could try. I would use Gotu Kola. Gotu Kola and comfrey are the two that I really love for scarring. So Gotu Kola and comfrey extracted in oil, and then add some castor oil and add vitamin E. That combination works really well for me for scarring. I don't think that horsetail would work really well with that, but you could try it. And I would take it internally because I think that internally would be good for that. Alrighty. Next week, not here. We're dark next Monday because I'm sorry.
I can't come the next week either.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Look at her.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay, well, week after next for everyone except Cynthia, you can join us online.
We'll be working.
Oh, you'll be working.
I'll watch it after.
Lot
Yeah,
of work.
but you just take it and you watch it again. It's
There you
not
go.
quite the same. But
You can just have a surreptitious
It's so not the
phone
same.
it's so not the same.
watching on the phone. Everyone's saying it's so not the same being online and watching. Week after next is Eleutherococcus senticosus, formerly known as Siberian ginseng. We will be working with. So that'll be our plant in 2 weeks. It's not a fun one, Cynthia. You will not be missing anything. You won't even like it.
Okay.
It's gross.
Great.
It's nasty tasting and it's
I believe you.
worthless and.
For nothing.
Oh shoot! You believe me? I can't lie to you if you say you believe me. Yeah. All right. So people online, don't come here. I'm not going to be here on the. Misha, hello. I was in your area. And Michelle says it's so not. It isn't. It's pretty tasty and pretty wonderful. Christina, I will see you in September. Missy, I will see you in September. And I'll see the rest of you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.